How should Christians respond to transgenderism? Is there a difference between sex and gender? And why is transgenderism such a hot topic in our culture today? In this video, I'm going to share with you 3 biblical truths about gender issues and how every Christian should respond to transgenderism. And I'm going to guess that a lot of Christians won't like what I have to say about this. Hi, my name is David Cipriano. I'm a youth pastor and my goal is to teach the Bible to as many people as possible. Now, the church is very divided on the issue of transgenderism, and with many pastors and Christian leaders on both sides of the issue, a lot of people will wonder which side is right. And no matter what you believe, there's going to be lots of people who disagree with you. But the important thing is, what does the Bible say? And here's 3 things that everybody needs to know. The first is that there are only 2 genders. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him. Male and female created he them. People are trying to do away with gender distinction, where it's seen as a fluid thing, and you can be whatever you want, whenever you want, and it's becoming more and more confusing. This was shown when Ketanji Brown Jackson was asked to define what a woman is, and she avoided the question by saying, "I'm not a biologist." It's sad that even highly educated people can't describe what a woman is, and if you don't know the difference between a man and a woman, then you have a problem. But she was right about one thing though, and it's that gender is defined by biology. Now, there was a time when it was commonly understood that gender and sex were interchangeable terms, but people are trying to make this distinction between the two, where sex is seen as biological and gender is about how you choose to identify. People will say that gender is nothing more than a social construct, or that gender identity is just tradition. And I don't agree with that, but that's what the popular idea is. Now, some Christians may think that gender is really confusing, and a lot of people are wondering, why didn't God make this any clearer? But it's actually very simple. You are born a male or you are born a female, and that's who you are. And gender only becomes confusing when we treat truth and fact as just social constructs or fluid. Maybe you've heard the term gender dysphoria, where a person is having trouble identifying with their biological sex and they're confused about their identity. Sometimes when filling out a form and it comes to gender, even if there's dozens of options available, they'll click other. And when we're constantly changing meanings and definitions, the true facts and realities are becoming more and more blurred and confusing. But the Bible says that God is not the author of confusion. All of this confusion and gender dysphoria is not from God. You're either a male or you're a female. There's no other or in between, because there are only 2 genders, and Christians need to be firm and stand strong on the facts. Number 2, changing your gender is rejecting God's design. Your gender wasn't assigned at birth, it was recognized. All people are either males or females. And the Bible says, "I will praise thee, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made." No matter who you are, you're wonderfully made, and God made you just right, the way that he intended you to be. And when a person goes through processes like hormone replacement therapy or gender reassignment, they're rejecting that design, and they're often doing irreversible damage to their bodies. And it's especially sad to see children go on puberty blockers or have reconstructive surgeries when they aren't old enough to understand any better. And you might be surprised to hear this, but I am actually in favor of children receiving gender-affirming care, because I affirm their God-given biological gender. And I think it's a shame that adults are being told to just go along with whatever a child says or feels, because children are bad at processing feelings and emotions. And when they hear the LGBT agenda being promoted everywhere they look, then there's often a pressure to make a decision based on that. If I had a child and they came to me saying that they're questioning their gender identity, here's what I'd tell them: that God made you just right. He has a plan and a purpose for your life. And when a person transitions from male to female or vice versa, they're stating that God made a mistake. Transgender people are not being their true selves. When a person changes their identity, people may praise them for becoming their true self, but actually they're doing the opposite. They're changing everything about themselves. themselves. Because contrary to popular opinion, there's a difference between the way you feel and the truth, and just because you wish something or feel something doesn't make it true. A trans person may claim that they're being themselves, but this isn't true. Transgenders will take special hormones, change their name, get reconstructive surgery, go to speech therapy to change their voice, and that's not being yourself. That's changing everything about yourself. Now I realize that not every trans person may not do all of those things, but a person who wants to switch genders is rejecting who they really are. You need to be yourself, and being yourself means that you accept the person that God created you to be. Our culture keeps on blurring the lines between feeling and fact, where if you think something or feel something, then it must be true. But in a world where we all have our own truth and our own version of reality, we need to take a stand and say this is fact and this is fiction. If you're transitioning your gender identity, you're not being yourself and you're rejecting your God-given identity. And number 3, the Bible condemns transgenderism. The book of Deuteronomy says, "The woman shall not wear that which pertaineth unto a man, neither shall a man put on a woman's garment. For all that do so are abomination unto the Lord thy God." So not only is changing your gender a sin, but it's even a sin to just dress like the other gender. It's wrong for a person to try to look like and be like the other gender, like what a drag queen does. God gave men and women different biology, different anatomy, and different roles and responsibilities. And when it comes to something even as seemingly insignificant as clothing, even that matters to God. And cross-dressing or transvestitism is a big deal to him, which is why it's referred to as an abomination. And 1 Corinthians 6:9 condemns the act of a man being effeminate because he's rejecting how God made him and blurring the very clear gender distinctions that God made. There's only 2 genders, and God doesn't want for us to confuse and mix the two. So you'll notice that transgenderism and gender confusion is a sin in both the Old Testament and the New Testament, which means that you can't say that it was just part of the law and that it's no longer relevant today. And with the direction that our culture is going in, I'd say that these verses are more relevant now than ever. So if you're a Christian who wants to defend your faith and stand strong against LGBT issues, these are verses that you need to know. And finally, how should Christians respond to the issues of transgenderism and gender identity? Well, here's 2 things that all of us should do. First, we need to stand firm on truth. Ephesians 6:14 says, "Stand therefore, having your loins girt about with truth." As Christians, we need to stand strong on the truth and the facts, and people may hate us for it. They may call us bigots or transphobic or ignorant, but at the end of the day, I don't care about being popular or liked. I care about being truthful. And a major reason why gender issues have gotten so distorted and confusing is because many Christians haven't been standing for truth, would rather be popular than honest, would rather please people than please God. And when it comes to LGBT issues, we need to stand firm on the truth and be willing to say there's only 2 genders. Transitioning your gender is rejecting how God made you. Trans people aren't being their true selves, and transgenderism is a sin. So we need to stand strong on the truth. Next, we need to be kind. The Bible tells us to speak the truth in love. We can call sin what it is, but we also have the responsibility to show love and kindness. We always need to remember that homosexuals and transgenders aren't less human or less valuable than anybody else. God doesn't love one group of people more than another. Jesus didn't just die for the straights or the cisgenders, he died for everyone. And if Jesus loved them unconditionally, then so should we. We shouldn't be name-calling and yelling and dehumanizing others. We need to love them the way that Jesus does. We need to love the sinner but hate the sin. A trans person's greatest need is not to detransition, it's to be saved from their sins. And as Christians, we need to reach them, but we can't reach them with hate. We need to reach them with love and with truth. Jesus said that his disciples will be known by love, and even when we're rejecting false teachings about about gender, we're still commanded to be kind. Sometimes truth will be perceived as hate, but even negative truths can be shared graciously. I recently saw a church share that God hasn't called us to be right, He's called us to be loving, and this is just a lie, because being truthful isn't done kind at all. Now I understand what the meaning behind it is, because a lot of people are more concerned about winning arguments and putting others in their place than they are about helping people. But we can't pretend like being right and being loving contradict each other, because being right is loving, and being loving is right. And when we choose to avoid the truth under the disguise of loving people, that's a very unloving and unkind thing to do. So when it comes to transgenderism and LGBT issues, Christians need to be both truthful and loving, and those two don't contradict each other, they work together. If this video was a help, then make sure to check out my previous video about the biggest myths of LGBT and Christianity. Thanks for watching, and subscribe for more.